you can turn a setback into energy and then use that whole thing to fuel your next big move. Adam Barney would know. He didn't always have the confidence and clarity he's known for today, which you'll see is pretty strong. In fact, he started out as a shy kid who had to learn over and over that resilience isn't just about bouncing back. It's about building forward. And as an energy coach, which I love, and the author of a book called Make Your Own Glass Half Full, Adam helps founders and leaders harness their mindset, protect their energy, and take bold action toward their vision. In this episode, he shares how to turn adversity into opportunity and why betting on yourself is always the right move. This one is going to recharge you. I'm Lindsay Chepkema, and this is Actually I Can. Hi, Adam.
Hey, Lindsay. How are you?
I am so good. I'm so excited to have you here and to talk through. I mean, you have like a range of things that you're ready to talk about. So I'm like excited to dig into them. We met each other through some pretty interesting circumstances through Founders for Kamala. And we have been, interacting ever since. And I love your energy and your enthusiasm. And when I was making a list of people to join me on the show, you popped right up because you are so eager to share some of your Actually I Can moments. So before we do all of that, Adam, welcome. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to join Actually I Can today. So I'm on a professional level, I'm an energy coach, and I'd love to say that's about mystical stones and sorcery. Maybe I'll bring that into my practice in the next 5 or 10 years.
Get some crystals, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. But it's really about how I've worked with hundreds of both emerging, which I love to highlight emerging, and executive leaders to keep them energized and accountable. I love to help, work on doing that visioning work that leads to the center of where you march, and then you build the systems that the goals that build into the systems get brought into. So that's what I do on a day-to-day basis. I recently just published a book also called Make Your Own Glass Half Full, The Empowered Path to Optimism and Autonomy. And that really gets into a lot of the Actually I Can moments that I've faced throughout my career that really focus on betting on myself despite resistance or doubt or what the societal norms are be. And then in that coaching practice, it's really built on, and how we met, I think, through Founders for Kamala. I'm focused on trying to bring more justice and equity to the world. It's that idea that I've always felt. I turned 42 back in September of last year.
I just turned 42 in December. So 1982 was a good year.
1982 was a great year. Happy belated birthday.
You too.
I, for decades of my life and my career, have wished that I could bottle up the position and the confidence of, hi, I'm a white male, and hand that to people, no matter background or experience, to help give them that energy, that accountability, and that support to take the ideas that sit in the back of their head and not only set up the opportunity to act on them, but continue to stay resilient on that path. Because whether you're a founder or you're someone who's trying to launch something, or no matter where you come from, if you stay to the center of what drives you, and I love to use the Japanese concept, ikigai, the Japanese concept for reason for being, that pulls together what you're good at, what you love, what the world needs, what you can get paid for. Mm-hmm. And when you march towards the center of that vision, I really feel like no matter how low the road can feel, if you stay marching straight ahead on that path, eventually staying in that center, you see that road start to turn up. And that's what I've faced through my own life. In my corporate career, I worked in over 20 years of a nonlinear corporate marketing career, working everywhere from venture capital-backed startups to enterprise-scale global companies like, Microsoft, which touches every human on this earth, whether they want to or not, on a daily basis. And through that journey, I was laid off twice, right? Mm-hmm. So both of those times I saw, although there's a significant allure of darkness to fall into on a negative downward cycle, if you use optimism and autonomy, you can march ahead to coming out of that. And the sun always reveals itself from behind the clouds.
It's true. Okay. The fact that you call yourself an energy coach makes so much sense to me now. Like, I feel like if you were trying to find a title, that would be like, that's perfect, based on everything you just told me. And we align a lot. So I also did marketing. I mean, corporate career in marketing, very large companies, very small companies. And I have been that visionary founder, come to find out, like halfway through my journey as a visionary founder. That's a thing.
Right.
And you need people like you to, I love that you kind of refer to it as energy. We talk about energy a lot as people, but I think the
Right.
energy of the business, where it starts with those big, crazy, audacious goals that a founder is uniquely positioned and often gifted in going and finding. And we talk a lot about like taming them and like, the visionary founder is going to be all over the place and like constantly firing off new ideas. But I love your idea of like channeling the energy to putting the systems and processes and operations around actually breathing them into life, because that's where, businesses that transcend and ideas that become realities and lives that become fulfilled, that's where they start, is like actually seeing through those big crazy goals and those big crazy ideas as not crazy, but
Right.
as turning those into the actually I can moments. Like, no, actually it's not crazy. No, actually, I should be doing this. It's audacious in a good way. And
I think the other part of it, though, I do love to work with my coaching clients on BHAGs, right? Those big, hairy,
yeah,
audacious goals. But it's also like, no matter who you are, we've all got a little bit of crazy within us, and it's having that grace about yourself to be okay with that and
yeah,
understand that crazy is just what makes you unique in the world. And
100%.
it's even more broadly than justice and equity. It's about individuals in the world,
Yes.
right? Justice and equity is great to work towards, but really, I think the flavor of what that should move to is just talking about how every individual on this world is different and has a unique set of experiences, strengths, and perspectives
Yeah.
that can elevate and change the world and make it a better place. And
And
that's
how that's a
outside
good thing.
that. It's a great thing, and it's
Yeah.
a larger mission, I think, that can work into this idea that also brought me into becoming really active, not only in Founders for Kamala, but Vote Save America. I've done a lot of learning in the climate space. I actually just kicked off a couple days ago a program with the Harvard Kennedy School on power and influence for
I
positive
saw that.
impact.
Yeah, congratulations. That's very
So
cool.
all of this work that I think we're aligned in doing, and so many of the people that we touch within our networks are doing, is really built on trying to open up that opportunity and be that support system that doesn't just talk about it, the system that actually shows up, right? That's the
Yes.
difference. That's the game changer.
Yeah. Okay, so what has that looked like for you? I mean, you came to me and you're like, actually I can moments all day long. So what how do you think you got to this place of this like passion about, helping people to embrace who they are, not in spite of their differences, but because of them, and fueling
Right.
this energy towards BHAGs? Like, tell me something about your story.
It's fascinating to look back on where I've been. I mean, I through high school, Lindsay, was a shy kid. I was not the one
That's
who was
very hard to
learning.
believe, Adam.
It's incredible though when you find the supportive communities that help
Yeah.
you blossom and open up. And one of my favorite visualizations that I actually got approval to use in my book comes from Tim Urban, who has run a fantastic website called Wait But Why,
Oh
and
yeah. Okay.
he has a life paths visualization that I actually have had taped on the wall behind my monitor here for about 5 years. And it's this idea that, you've got this chart of your history and then the future. Today is right in the middle. And then you have the black line amongst green lines of your history. And the black line is the line that you've gone on, but it wiggles and it winds. And then I love to use that to look at the future, because those lines get even wigglier and windier the further you go in your career
Yeah.
or the further you move in your life.
Yeah. 100%. So, I mean, tell me more. Like, what is that?
But
You
I
said
mean,
you
but
were
I
you
mean,
were a shy
there,
kid.
There's a story I talk about early in my book. I remember this vividly. I was about 8 years old. I was pitching in Little League. I'm also someone, super unstereotypically. I don't give a hoot about sports. I love to dive into music and learning and trying to evolve in that arena instead. So I'm an
Hmm.
atypical male in the world, I think, in a lot of different ways. But I was pulled in the ninth inning of a little league game to pitch for the final out in the bottom of the ninth inning. I go up there to the mound. It wasn't about the outside competition from my coach. It wasn't about the competition from my team or the other team or the crowd sitting in the on the stands. It was about that self-determination inside myself. And I didn't
Mm.
realize that until many, many years after. But that's what led me to get up there and just pitch three strikes for the final out. But the crazy thing that comes out of that is I was pitching to the only girl who was in the little league, in
Okay.
the little league organization.
Okay.
And I spent the whole car ride on the drive home after striking her out, which, whoop did he do? That's great. Actually wondering, why is she the only girl in the league? Like there's something even back in that formative stage of my life that
Yeah.
didn't sit right in my mind. So that just is the example that I start with on what's brought me on this path. I spent a number of years working in the big agency world, working with Fortune 50 clients. I was working with Bank of America through the 2008 financial crisis and helping them,
Ooh.
not only get bigger, managing a team of 20 people, working with C-level executives at Bank of America and learning how to communicate in that sort of an environment. But I was going home at night, not sure how I could rectify the fact that I was making one of what arguably is the most evil organizations in the world get bigger and bigger as they're gobbling up Merrill Lynch. And I'm
Yeah.
focusing on trying to build the marketing side of the mergers and acquisitions. Well, you watch so many people through the mortgage crisis lose their homes. And it was tough to rectify that, but that opened up another door in my mind of how do I make an impact on the world? Um,
Yeah.
Another formative piece, my wife Paula and I met actually doing Hurricane Katrina relief work in New Orleans about a year and a half after that storm decimated that city. And it's still unknown how many lives exactly were lost through that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was an incredibly important step in my own journey, though, because you go down there a year and a half after the storm hits. We were in a church bunk with two high wooden wooden bunks, hand built. Uh, Amazingly enough, high school and early college AmeriCorps kids were running the program down there. So talk about seeing a different aspect of how leaders can action even
Yeah.
at a young age. And we were going out into this neighborhood, and a year and a half after, we were still opening up doors that had never been opened
Wow.
and doing, mold remediation and demolition work within these houses. Crazy experiences. But outside of that, it was about meeting these people in this community and seeing how much hope they still had and how there was still resilience, even though they'd been dragged through an unbelievable tragedy and then re-dragged through the lack of support that we get from a systemic basis in this country when we face disasters. Especially now as we're recording, we're seeing what's happening in California,
Yeah. Yeah.
Southern California, with some of the fires out there. And
Hmm.
you know but that's just another formative step in my journey. And
Yeah.
one of the most vivid experiences from that that trip, and it's led to multiple other trips down there to do other volunteer work to help. We got sent off one day to Plaquemines Parish, which Plaquemines Parish is south of New Orleans. You go way into the bayou. It's where there have been dams put up so that the Gulf of Mexico has a higher propensity to flood. We
Hmm.
go to Plaquemines Parish. It was completely decimated, under 20 feet of water through Hurricane Katrina. So
Wow.
every house was lost. And we got brought in to go to a FEMA trailer park with an organization called Kaboom. And their mission is to build a playground within walking distance of every kid in this country. It's a fantastic mission. And we were building a playground at this FEMA trailer park. So, I've never built a playground before. It was kind of a fun experience to learn something new. And we get it done. We had, a big barbecue and a ribbon cutting ceremony, and they cut the ribbon. And then the people who were leading this project go, but the kids, you can't play on the playground, because they had not put the safety material down
Okay.
on the ground
Mm-hmm.
to use it. And you could feel that gasp and that air being taken out of so many people. But there was a young young kid whose name was Keith. I've ended up staying connected with him over the years, who had that unbelievable resolve and perspective to go, hey, I know this is disappointing that this didn't open, but look, we still have this playground. And you could still feel the little bit of hope that was within him. And that stuck with me. It's an
Yeah.
unbelievable experience to go through. Again, I talked quickly about being laid off twice in my corporate career. I've always pulled up my bootstraps. The first time I built a boutique marketing agency that was just me, myself, and I here in the Boston area, pounding pavement. The second time, it ended up leading me on a journey,
Yeah.
to where I am today. So I just mention all of this though because these different experiences have led me to where I am. I mean,
Yeah.
I will share here. Just over 10 years ago, in November, I lost my mother to ALS.
Mm.
And you talk about how one of my favorite chapters in the book talks about the allure of darkness and how darkness is something that you can get pulled into really easily. And
100%.
as you fall down that downward cycle, it becomes more and more difficult to pull yourself back out of it. So
Mm-hmm.
it's an allure. It's a thing to get tied back into. But unfortunately, losing my mom actually opened up a door for me to get involved with the ALS Therapy Development Institute that's outside of Boston, become really deeply involved with them, and also become part of a familial ALS study with the neurology department at the University of Miami that's led by Dr. Michael Benatar, who's the world's preeminent leading ALS researcher in the world.
Hmm.
So although it was incredibly difficult to watch my mom decline and then lose her, because she was a hugely important, valuable person
Yeah.
within my family, it opened up these doors that wouldn't have been opened otherwise.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's where that comes to the forefront in my own perspective. And it also those are the experiences I've had. Everyone goes through things that are difficult like that.
yeah. Well, I think, I mean, and listening to the different stories you're sharing, I mean, it sounds like over and over this allure of darkness, this choices, right? I think it sounds to me like you've been very aware of the choices both that you were able to make and the choices that were made by others, kind of like either that have impacted you positively or negatively, and then the ramifications that they had on others, right? So everything from the girl that were pitching to, all the way to the people that you were building a playground for, and colleagues and coworkers and coaches and mentors and your mom and people in your life, that it's like there's this, like, how am I here, how are they there, and how can we make this better? And that's what I
Exactly.
see in you, like, based on how we met and like what I see you doing. And I guess tell me how you see that coming to life in the work that you're doing now, everything from writing to
Right.
serving other founders. Like, you're taking these lessons learned and all of those, actually I can, all of those moments, and turning it into kind of one big, actually I can try to make a difference.
Right.
So
It's incredible. It's one of those things that I mean, for the last 2 years, I'm in the second year of coaching. I've coached almost 200 micro businesses who are recipients of this Comcast Rise grant program, right? And that's just another example of how I feel like I've always felt like I learn more about myself when I have conversations with diverse groups of people, whether they're people who are neighbors in our
mhm,
neighborhood here in Dorchester and Boston, or extending around the world, to
mhm,
the teams I've worked on, the clients that I've served, the communities that I've become a part of. It's always about having those conversations and holding a mirror up almost, because I can reflect those experiences that I learned from other people back on myself and my journey. And,
Mm-hmm.
I intentionally quit the corporate world 4 years ago to build something. I didn't know what it was going to be. I spent that first year, a lot of people in COVID, right, with the impact of that, took their foot off the gas in terms of networking.
Yeah.
I somehow found this thread to supercharge my networking ability. I also, Lindsay, really agree, and this is part of the actually I can ideal. Everyone in this world has a superpower, has a
Yeah.
unique superpower. My superpower is about building, it's networking at a broad understanding standpoint, but it's about building more than just connections. It's about building collisions within my network. And
Mm-hmm.
that's something that informs this, what I've built and what I've done. It's all of this reflection back,
Yeah.
tying back though to those micro business owners. I would actually love to see, well, policy changes. Number one, I'd love to see the Equal Rights Act passed finally in this country. That's something I've been supportive of for coming up on 20 years now. That's a game changer. But I'd love to see, in a business perspective, a classification addition of micro businesses. There are, small businesses can be up to 500 employees.
Yeah, which is insane that my business, that's me, like the tens of dollars that I'm bringing in, is the same as, a multi-million dollar company with hundreds of employees. Like we're not the same.
No, I think there should be a new classification built for micro businesses. And
Yeah.
these are probably 1 to 20 employee organizations, and they should be treated differently. And
Mm-hmm.
it's been really fascinating to tie back to coaching those kinds of clients, just like a tech startup founder, or, someone who's building a big business. Those typically family owned operations. It could be, anywhere from a dog walking business in Philadelphia to a fast casual handmade pasta company opening in Center City in Jacksonville, Florida. All of those kinds of founders have 3 million things going on in their head, and that's what they're laser focused on.
Yeah.
Having that opportunity to step in as a coach with those kinds of businesses and give them a second brain,
Mm-hmm.
basically, that has a little bit of overlap, but also a different set of experiences, opens up their mindset on how they can scale up their business. And
Yeah.
that's what I love to help enable. And that's where the corporate career that I followed, working from those venture capital all the way to those enterprise scale companies, comes into play, because I understand that perspective on what it looks like to go from starting up small to that next level of global impact or global change that you can make.
Yeah. I mean, because that's where every business starts, right?
Right.
And they need, I mean, speaking from experience, both as the founder and then also working with lots of founders at lots of different stages, you need that support from someone like you
Right.
who says, let's do this right. Let's focus on your why. Let's get you the resources to bring your vision to fruition, to carry the energy of that vision on through to process and operations and completion and to growth. The problem that I experienced as a founder, and I see over and over again, which often gets talked about as stress and pressure and grind and burnout, is a real deep, not only human problem, but business problem, because the only help that founders tend to get is, let's talk about your financial model. Let's talk about how to grow faster. Let's talk about how we go up and to the right. Let's talk about your fundraising strategy. Let's talk about how you're going to hire more people and you're going to deliver more, 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 more. And it's not about your why. It's not about the humans. And it very quickly doesn't become about the humans you're serving. It's about the money, status, and ego of the people who have built the system.
Right.
And I think it's people like you and hopefully a lot of people that I'm working with, and what I'm trying to do too, to say, no, no, you get to define success on your own terms.
Right.
And I'm here to help you. And far too many people and organizations and institutions completely push that off the table. It's like founders are a cog in a wheel. And so I don't know. I'm glad that you're here.
No, and it's one of those, but it's incredible because it's partly that idea of why not you, right?
Yeah.
And I think people lose sight because we fall into the systemic, stereotypical systems that we work in that don't feel like they can take that calculated risk to make that change.
Right.
And
Because a lot of them can't. I mean, especially underrepresented founders. Um, that can mean a lot of things financially. Obviously, it goes into that as well. I mean, the calculated risks that the stereotypical founders can make and still be safe and still grow and actually maybe be even seen as brave or like superhero founder mode are not the same risks that underrepresented and non-stereotypical founders can take, because
right.
you if you're lucky enough to get one shot and you don't play by the rules, there it goes. So
Well, and I would argue there, who wants to play by the rules, right? You know what I mean? And
not anymore.
that is tied also to the idea that failure isn't the opposite of success, right? It's a
Yeah.
part of that journey. And those setbacks can become springboards with that right perspective. And
Yeah.
that idea, you know, you can be the right person to solve the industry challenges that you're facing. It's okay. And the other piece that I'll tie it to, because I come from a deep marketing background, you know, we're unique individuals in the world, but none of us are necessarily building something that's completely different or brand new from anyone else in the world.
Yeah.
So I mentioned that, though. Number one, you should learn from your competitors, whether they're your local competitors, or I tell a lot of these micro business coaching clients, outside of your local geography, who are the people in other areas of the country doing something similar that you can learn from and that you can emulate from, or that are having a bigger impact? And you can take so much knowledge just from taking, it's more than 2%, it's less than 5% of your time to keep an eye on the competition. And
Mm-hmm.
that competition also opens up an opportunity. And this goes back into networking. Why don't you connect with those other business owners who have faced the same challenges? And I love to influence the idea. And a lot of what can help founders stay engaged outside of working with me as their energy coach is to build a board of advisors.
Yeah.
And a simple board of advisors are those people who, they can't be people you met 6 months ago. They should be people who have known you for years and know those threads that build up what your ikigai is. But then when you look at that vision work of what you're trying to build, they can be those guideposts that not on a daily basis, not on a weekly basis, not even on a monthly basis, maybe 4 times a year, you check in with them and you tell them where you're going. And they can either give you that constructive criticism and feedback that's so important. Getting a no, it isn't valuable, but getting a no and here's why
Yeah.
is so critically important for how we iterate and stay resilient on that path. That board of advisors is such a great checkpoint or checkpost to keep us engaged and moving forward, and making sure that we're not stepping too far away from what we had initially set out to build in terms of businesses.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so tell me more about when you're working with these like founders of these micro companies, and it sounds like quite often they're atypical founders, and um, I got to believe that there's some fear, some unknowns, some uncertainty. And I wonder too, with everything you just said about like this personal board of advisors, I've always seen, and I'm like doing a little derail, and then I'm gonna come back to your question, to the question I'm actually going to ask you, is this personal board of advisors. my observation, and I'm curious about your thoughts,
Hmm?
is that that is something that at both ends of the spectrum seems to be pretty strong. So you have like the super typical founder, right? Lots of privilege, which good for them, cool.
Yep.
Like
Right.
they typically have that, like the elite colleges, the generational support, the legacy, like awesome. Nothing against that. More power to you. But like that's something that personal board of advisors, those mentors that exist in that system. And then I think um, observation is that quite often at the very other end of the spectrum, you have communities of people who tend to come around the forward thinkers and the people that are like, I'm going to go do this thing, and they tend to have systems that come around them and say, I'm here for you. There's a very large gap, obviously not all the time, but like there's this very large gap in the middle of people who are like personal board of directors. That's not me. I don't know how to do that. Where would I even begin? Like people think that I have it all together, but I don't. I don't know who I would go to. Like, tell me if that's been your observation too, where people don't feel like they should ask for help because it's perceived as weakness. Um,
I see that a lot, actually. There are people who don't ask for help. And luckily, this program I've been a part of forces them to open up the conversation. But it's tough. I mean, a lot of what people aren't afforded that I think would work, even when you talk about people who are in your local neighborhood, it's about sitting down with them and not just having a casual conversation, but I love to start no matter who I'm talking with, whether it's someone that I'm just meeting over a virtual conversation or in person, with understanding their origin story.
mhm.
And when you offer someone that space to understand where they come from and what they're driven through, that opens up the door to that really active communication to help support them and understand. You opened up your laundromat, for instance. What was your vision? Is it just about having a sustainable monthly income? What does
Yeah,
that look like? But when you understand that origin, but it's a different flavor depending on those kinds of audiences, right?
it
It's a
is.
different idea when you've got the infrastructure. You've also when you've got a lot of people like you and I who have a spouse or a significant other who can help support you on this journey. It's not the same as the generational wealth or the education, but it gives you that additional cushion
Right.
to feel comfortable with making a calculated change.
Hmm.
I mean, I love to put people challenge people with a regret minimization framework, right?
Tell me
And
more about what that is.
so a regret minimization framework, most famously in this world, unfortunately, was used by Jeff Bezos to start Amazon.
Which feel how you feel about
Push,
him.
push,
Amazon
push.
was successful,
Well,
so
we were on a big holiday road trip, and the big activity driving for 13 hours was counting the number of Prime trucks on the highway that we saw.
how many did
Uh,
you get to? Do you even remember?
we got to 150 driving back between DC and
Oh
Boston.
my goodness. Oh my
But
word.
it's a great, it's an unfortunate, great time suck opportunity to count the Amazon trucks. It's
Yeah.
not what we're doing right for the world. But anyway, he used it to make that decision to say, do I pull the ripcord from this corporate job that I have to build this platform? And it really just goes through, is this something I'm going to regret in the future? And is
Mm.
it worth making, trying to do it and not giving up on it? It's a very simple equation to go through. Just thinking about, how over a long term, what the risk of not trying and regret is more than the risk of trying and failing. And I've seen some people frame it up to look 80 years in the future. I don't think it has to look that you have to go that deep in terms of the viewpoint.
Yeah.
I mentioned Ikigai before. In that early visioning work, I love to pull in an Odyssey plan, which is another document that I've put together that comes from two Stanford professors. But it's really this unique idea to look only 5 or 10 years in the future and then lay out three options. And the
Hmm.
first option is everything you're doing remains consistent. The second option is the alternative. Option one just disappears completely. What's the alternative that you would build?
Huh.
And then the third option is the no limitations, no constraints. And that's not a direct roadmap. That doesn't lay the pavement or the bricks down on the road, but it allows
But
you
it
to
makes you think.
step back just a little bit into the future about those BHAGs, those big, hairy, audacious goals,
Yeah.
and frame up a few different flavors.
Well, heck, sometimes it's 80 minutes into the future. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's tomorrow. I mean, like, especially for founders, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with this thing today.
But,
Like, I
but
don't know
that's
what to do with this thing next
but
week.
that's where, Lindsay, when you start with that 5 to 10 year view and you have those three options, and 99% of the time when that comes to actually putting that into action, it's not option A or option B or option C. It turns into a blend of two or all three of them,
Yeah, but
right? But it
it
gets
gets
the
you out
real.
of that spinning or
And
paralysis. Yeah.
that's where I come in and help enable building the systems that work towards that. And then that breaks down to those smaller goals.
Mm-hmm.
There's two sides to that setting of goals to put into place there. Number one, you have a bad day today. Give yourself the grace to step out of that and then try again tomorrow. The earth is still going to turn, the sun is still going to come up, no matter what's shifted. Try again tomorrow. If you get 2 days in a row where you don't get it achieved, then it's a bigger systems or strategic issue that you have to start to head around. That's where then, as an energy coach, I step in and give that accountability and the energy guidance and say, hey, I noticed you didn't do this yet, you didn't do that yet. We were supposed to have this done. Why not? And I'm not gonna slap your wrist basically over that, of course.
But it's that
But it's like
accountability.
it's accountability.
Yeah.
It's the accountability piece of it that comes into play. And
Yeah.
if you if you use that as a tool, that can change the perspective and open up those doors for where people, clients or whoever they are, can go. And that's true across a lot of micro businesses. They know that ikigai, they know that vision of what they wanted to build already. So that Odyssey plan comes into play to give them a frame of, well, you think about your business in 5 years, what do you want it to look? And those clients have realmed all the way. A couple businesses have shut down while we've been working together, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's what I like to influence. Even if you fail and you have to walk away from it, and that goes back to this regret minimization framework, you've still learned from that. And again, the sun is still going to rise
That's
tomorrow.
right.
It's
That's right.
still going to be okay. You might have to change some things that you're doing. You might have to shift around, but ultimately it opens up the door to say, you fail at something the first time, you're going to iterate and try to figure out how to do it better or more effectively or find the right market fit to have it succeed the next time.
For
And
sure.
even if you have to pull back up and go back into a more traditional stereotypical job, there are so many transferable learnings that come from building something that then allow you to elevate in going back into a normal stereotypical job.
Yeah, there is no backward, and there is no complete restart. There is no starting over. I don't know if you're a fan of Mel Robbins. I'm a large fan
Yeah.
of Mel Robbins,
Yep. Yep.
and she talks about like there is no starting from scratch. Like you're never starting over because you bring with you, after a failure, after a devastation, after a setback, you
Yep.
bring a completely new set of experiences, of the ability to empathize, of like lessons learned. And quite often it's the tuition you pay for the lessons you learn for
Right.
the next thing you're going to do.
Right. I love also to tell any client that I've coached over the years, go get a little 99-cent tiny little notebook and write your small wins in it. Because no
Mm-hmm.
matter, even if you have a day you feel like you failed, there's always at least one small win you can capture. And then it should be small enough to sit in your back pocket, literally. And then when you're having that dark time or that tough day, you pull it out and you remind yourself of the small wins,
Yeah,
right?
I have a folder in my email. It's called kudos that I just, and sometimes it's so little that just a little great job, or because it's from who it's from, or like it's the way someone introduced me, like, hey, Adam, I just want to introduce you to my friend Lindsay. She
Right.
insert paragraph of lovely things that somebody said about me. Like, so you need those, especially as a founder or any sort of leader, because you're going to get beat down and you're going to forget. And no matter how successful you are, I mean, we see this. I'm sure you've experienced this. I've experienced this. We see this with like the world's top athletes and everything, talking about how no matter what stage they're on, what championship they just won, it's easy and instantaneous to write it all off. And you
Right.
have to continuously go back and remind yourself that what you're doing is good, that what you're doing matters, and
And
hopefully that what you're doing is important.
what you've done in the past only builds where you go in the future
That's right.
also, right? It's not I I have this perspective that 99% of the people in the world cannot achieve this, but the fully optimized human has a therapist that helps them resolve issues that happened in the past, a mentor or a board of advisors that sit in the middle that help keep you motivated on a strategic directional basis, and then a coach helps you work towards the future.
Oh, I love that.
It's an idea that I've had that came to me a number of years ago, but most people can't achieve those three things concurrently, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to do that from a systemic basis, and you have kids and obligations. There's time is limited, right?
Yeah.
It does play into that idea, though, of one of the few things that level sets at an individual, unique for every human on this planet, is we all only have 24 hours in the day. And it's
Mm-hmm.
how we use that 24 hours that's the game changer. That's a part of the conversation as well that I like to have.
I love it.
The other idea that just came up to my mind is how a small change of direction can add up over time. So
For sure.
think about, in the beginning, think about this, if it's a plane flying from, say, LA to New York, right?
Mm-hmm.
You change three and a half degrees difference on that trajectory, you end up in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
That's a really easy way to think about how small changes can really add up and drive bigger changes all the time. Over time, rather, it goes back to that small wins notebook, right? That you keep,
Yeah.
or the kudos notebook. Keep those in mind, and those can put you to move those to a different location and a different endpoint. And the
Yeah.
other part is, I like to think, I published my first book last year, of course, but I like to think of life as in chapters, right? And it's not the end of the book until the inevitable of we all, die at some point in time, but you're just turning a corner to a different chapter of the book. And how does a book work? It builds on the previous chapter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good reminders. Good reminders. Okay, so in summary, everybody should be working with you, obviously, and I think giving themselves space and permission to think about things like their energy, and to embrace their vision and embrace their uniqueness, and to not have it all figured out. So, what what would you say, like thinking back on all of your actually I can moments, like looking at some of these founders that you're working with and that are hopefully listening now, what's the big, like the key takeaway that you want to leave people with?
I mean, it's really about your energy is your most powerful asset. And if you don't protect and cultivate it, or find those whether it's me or other people to help cultivate it, you'll never have enough to fill your own glass half full. That's to
Mhm.
make your own glass half full.
I love it. I love it. Okay, well, Adam, where can everybody find you so that they can make their glasses half full?
I mean, you can find me at www.adamwbarney.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. I love to build my network and have conversations with different people. Those are the best two places.
And where can they
Adam
get your
W.
book?
Barney. Yeah, pick up my book. You can pick up my book through my website, or also at makeyourownglasshalffull.com. Outside of the one-to-one coaching, I also am starting to build this platform called the Glass Half Full Collective,
Love it.
where I start to bring 10 to 15 people in a cohort-based environment in to work on this energy generation. So it toes a line back to the micro business work that I've been doing for the last couple of years, but it's about making it accessible and getting more people to benefit from my perspective and the experiences that I've had and what I've learned from the thousands of conversations I've had with other people all around the world.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, Adam, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for bringing your energy and sharing it with all of us.
Thank you. Yep. And I'll remind everyone, actually, I can is the most important piece to repeat over yourself in your mind.
That's right. Let's do it. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you so much, Lindsay.
Thanks for joining me for another episode of Actually, I Can. And did you know that actually you can subscribe so that you never miss an episode? Yeah, do it now. And you can also go to actuallyican.show and watch any episode anytime. Thanks for joining.